in regards to Jordan Travis that he will participate tomorrow, but it sounded like he'll still be limited.
Very minimal.
Yeah. So I found that interesting. So the other quarterbacks will get some run.
Get it on, man. We wanted to expedite that. We did. We talked about it.
But yesterday's group was led by Johnny. Johnny was unbelievable yesterday. Some of the catches that he made. Early on, he made a catch, and that was, the rule. If you see somebody in trail coverage, what do? You throw it right by his ear.
Mm-hmm.
Great throw there, but then Johnny had to kind of twist his body to make the catch and then pull it in before he got hit in order to be able to secure the play. That was one. The early 11-on-11, they had a deep shot. They had 2 or 3 deep shots yesterday, intermediate routes, underneath routes, tough catches going to the ground. He was just phenomenal yesterday.
He does a good job of stacking, where he gets guys on his hip, and you're in trouble now. I've got you stacked. You got to come over me.
I thought Jordan was excellent for the bulk of practice. Defense responded very late. Mike Norvell said after practice that there were dominant stretches both ways, kind of implying that it was even. I read it as more that the offense, especially on the skill side of things, was much better for most of the day, which is good.
Yeah.
Because the defense owned Tuesday.
Dominated Tuesday, yeah.
And they had a good scrimmage against the offense. So that it's a good response from the offensive side. But Jordan hardly ever gets confused. And they're throwing a lot of wrinkles at him, and he just knows where to go with the football. And his internal clock, that's something that there's a non-contact jersey on, so you can't make a full assessment. But his internal clock and pocket presence, to me, appears to be at another level, which is really dangerous. If you've got a guy like that who is as elusive as he is in the open field as a runner, starts to have those movements in the pocket where it's just a subtle step to the left.
Yeah,
climb
the
up
comfort
to the
level in the pocket with no thought of taking off.
It might be part and parcel to a better offensive line.
I think partly that is it. He got real comfortable last year, too, though, even with just a good offensive line, yeah.
But you give that guy with all those skills that he has and the increased ability to throw the ball all over the field, good pocket presence and awareness, man, he's just a nightmare to play.
By the way, this weekend, we keep talking about this improved offensive line and how that improves the skills of everybody else, or at least allows them to be showcased. This is a weekend for defensive line recruits and offensive line recruits, big-time guys coming into town. I don't dwell a lot on this show on recruiting for next year's guys when we're so hyper-focused on this year's team, but they continue to get big-name kids, 4- and 5-star kids, to come here in the trenches, and they also have a really high-profile wide receiver, an elite wide receiver coming to town. Just you're seeing the progression of what happens when you win, because it's not just the winning. The winning's big. The winning is first and foremost, all the winning you can do. But when you win, somebody gets interested, so they decide to add you to the list of places they'll show up to. They go to that, and then they get to see the thing that we celebrate most, which is Mike's greatest strength, which is interaction with players, interaction and expectations of players, interactions with recruits. He's an asset. He's a huge asset if he can get across from them. The biggest problem he had, we all know it, to document again, was he got here, had no relationships in the state of Florida. COVID happens, can't build relationships in the state of Florida, can't talk to coaches, can't get down there and get to know these coaches. Nobody on his staff, the route he chose, or very few on his staff, had great relationships in the state of Florida. And then they started losing. So the team was bad. COVID, losses, it all amounts to you're not going to get good players from the state, from the South, to come visit you. Now you win 10 games, have high expectations, preseason chatter of top 10 ranking, and look who's coming. All of them, all of these elite players are coming. Well, if you're an asset, that is to say that whatever your message seems to ring true to these players, both the ones you've won in the transfer portal and the ones now that you're talking to in the high school ranks, which is why we think that grade will be increased greatly. That's all the more good news for Florida State fans.
Then I'll pivot to a freshman who stood out yesterday, and it was Hakeem Williams.
Hey!
Yeah.
Hey! So, welcome to the team, Hakeem.
About 3/4 of the way through the practice, I remarked to Ira, I said, man, Hakeem looks like he's caught up. He's up to speed. Things look solid and natural.
He looked winded to me for the first couple of weeks.
I agree.
I thought he was just tired. Yeah.
The speed of the game might have been a little much early on. And he said, well, he played well on Tuesday, too. I was not a Tuesday practice. Ira said he played well on Tuesday, too. So
here we go.
You've got a week of good practices now for Hakeem Williams, which is important. I just thought he looked very natural out there, did not look overwhelmed. There was one play. Tate had another good day, man. Tate had another good day.
Hey, Tough Love Cameron's helping Tate out a lot.
He is. Couldn't believe it. And there was one throw in particular early in 11-on-11 where, I mean, it is the equivalent of 101 on the black in terms of accuracy, velocity, and it was to Vandrevius Jacobs. The throw was coming towards 19 before he was out of his break. Vandrevius is already in the upper end of this roster in terms of releases and how he gets out of his routes and his
Yeah,
breaks. It's a little comeback.
mm-hmm.
So on the one side of it, you've got an outstanding release by Vandrevius. On the other side, you've got a missile that's on target and anticipatory from Tate. Just a wonderful play to watch. Later on in red zone, Tate makes 2 perfect throws for touchdowns. Again, red zone drills, so you're close to the end zone by nature. One to a walk-on, one to Rodney Hill. They had to be perfect. They had to be on time. They were.
Good.
Each of the quarterbacks, I think, yesterday had some excellent throws. But overall, I think the offense was the one that controlled the day. Ja'Kai Douglas had a very good first half of practice as well in blocking drills early on against, he's working against slot corners and safeties, so that's not too tall, too large of a task for him. And then also in some of the routes he had a 4th down catch in a situational drill, and then he caught a touchdown against Greedy Vance, who's been a tough mark in camp, a tough guy to beat. Absolutely dusted him with a cool release, and very fluid looking was Ja'Kai Douglas yesterday. Mike Norvell shouted praise for a few players. I noted that. Ja'Kai was one of them. Omar Graham was another. His nickname is OG. That's what Mike calls him.
They want Omar Graham to take a big step forward now. They want him to be a third linebacker that they can play a lot and trust. We'll see. I don't know if he will or he will not. I'm rooting for him too, because they need a third linebacker that they can trust. I don't think Lundy is that. He might, but I don't.
He's been okay this game.
That's exactly right. So I think you need another guy that you feel like play in, play out. If you played him, you would feel good about what he's capable of. They're not elite linebacker, and they will not be this year. But can they be good?
A one-off moment for a specialist at linebacker I thought was good. And again, I'm not saying that this dude has been dominant. It's just one play. But Kyle Morlock has been very difficult to cover in camp.
He's been very good.
Brendan Gant shut down a seam pass to Kyle Morlock in a really natural-looking manner, and that was late in the day. Outstanding coverage from Brendan, who is, you would think, size-wise and athleticism profile-wise, he's naturally suited to defend a guy like a Kyle Morlock or a slot.
He's one of the great surprises.
Yeah.
So you think about they move him from safety and put him at linebacker. That is akin to basically your last shot. And he not only doesn't get pissed about it and sulk. A lot of guys do. Feel like they're playing out of position. They're going to get exposed. They're frustrated. It's not why they came here. All that stuff. No, not only does he not sulk, he gave you some positive play last year. He turned out to be a pleasant surprise. If he continues to emerge on that front, he plays physically. He's tough. Okay. Is he going to be elite? Nope. But can he be somebody that you trust? Yeah, I think in that situation, that's probably true. Yeah.
See a question from Kajana in the chat about Winston Wright. You've been to enough practices. How's he looking? I think solid.
Yeah, solid's about the answer there.
Right.
I think they're taking that really slow.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with what you've seen out of Winston Wright. It's not like the fall where he was clearly hobbled and, it wasn't going to work. It's better than that. But if you're talking about difference makers or guys that jump off the page, I think Kentron's had a much better camp in that regard. And Vandrevius has been consistently very good and surprisingly explosive.
Vandrevius is the story of spring. I would think that's an accurate statement. He's the story of spring. Well,
yeah, Daryl Jackson and he.
But beyond the Vandrevius is more surprising than Daryl Jackson, because Daryl, of course, played last year for Miami, and we know what he is physically. Just got to get him to play hard all the time. But in terms of a freshman walking in here with what was thought to be a deep receiving core and to turn heads the way that he has, goodness gracious. That's, to me, the story of camp. Now, the only other thing I'd say about the story of camp is that, again, every time you go out there, and you can never take it for granted, every time you go out there, you see the size of this offensive line and this defensive line. Like, it's just the size and the depth of that is pretty amazing. And it continues to be. So it's exciting.
A couple of guys who stood out in team stuff. I didn't watch a whole lot of the trench one-on-ones. That's typically what I do, but I've watched a lot more skill of late. But in team one-on-ones, the 11-on-11 drills, Patrick Payton was around the ball a lot. And if it's not for Jordan having that internal clock, he might have had 3 or 4 sacks yesterday.
Good.
Payton had a blocked field goal. Kicking game was strong otherwise. Kicking game by both guys. Both
Etsu out here dominating, baby.
Both of them had good days yesterday.
Good.
Patrick Payton was around the ball a lot. Joshua Farmer had an early big play or two. He had a late big play or two. And then I did you know how the drills work. Sometimes they're staggered. So there's a 7-on-7 drill, but you're waiting for the next snap and you can look over to the trenches and back and forth. Ayo Tafasi caught my eye quite a few times.
He's going to be as he gets up to
Shot out
speed.
of a cannon.
He's going to be a real good player. I thought that last year when we got to look at him. I thought, okay, how'd Span do yesterday on a day where the receivers were playing well?
Fine. I'm, and that's not me trying to squeeze something out of it.
Yeah,
Like he was fine. He made a couple of good plays. There's just there's a consistency issue there, and sometimes there's some drops. Even Morlock had a drop yesterday, kind of wide open one.
Don't you say it?
Well, it's gonna happen. But Deuce made a couple of good plays. If I was gonna stack the receiver performances yesterday, you'd start with Johnny. You'd probably go to Jakai, then Kentron and Hakeem, kind of tied. Then Dravius there was nothing wrong with his performance yesterday.
Yeah,
He just didn't get a whole lot of targets.
To answer your question, Ryan, Keziah Holmes is who you're referencing, right? The Penn State kid running back. He looked really good early in camp. We're not really allowed to kind of report on any kind of injuries or anything like that. But I think guys get nicked. It's football. Guys get nicked, and then what happens is if they were consistently playing at a high level, and then they've got just something minor bothering them. Let me put it this way: if you're a player that they expect to play a lot in the fall, you're a player they expect that they need you. They want you to be part of a rotation that matters in games. If you got anything wrong with you, they're putting the green jersey on you. They're calming it down. If you have a bit of soreness or a nick or anything like that, and that's the way it should be. If you got a guy if Johnny Wilson today walked out there or yesterday walked out there and said, I get this aggravation in my right hip here down around my right side, even if they were like, whoa, you all right? Can you run? Yeah, I can. It feels a little tight right now. Shut it down, man. I know you're good. I don't need you to come out here and pull a hamstring or tear a ligament of some kind, and now we're screwed. You got to have surgery, man. If you don't practice. So I think that there have been moments in this spring where guys that people ask us about who have played well will have an ailment and they sit for 2 days or they practice minimally for 2 days. And I just want to be careful about how we report that because we're not allowed to report injury. But number two, if a guy's just sore and they want to not really have him go at it for a day, it doesn't mean he's hurt. No. Just they're being cautious.
Well, and look, I mean, much of the fall last year, the running backs wore green every day, which is the non-contact jersey. That's kind of par for the course. I see a hat tip to the chat. Toafili did have a good day yesterday, Lawrence Toafili.
Good.
Good. Backs. I thought Rodney and Lawrence both had nice moments. Rodney's day ended with a fumble, which I haven't seen a whole lot of. I know that there's been questions in the chat about does he have an issue with that. I haven't seen one. I don't know about you, but there was a fumble late in the going yesterday by Rodney. Lawrence had a couple of really nice runs back to back in a setting where it was basically like a live drive, and it moved the chains. Actually, they forgot what down it was at one point, which was kind of confusing when you're taking notes. But I thought they looked very good. CJ Campbell had a couple of nice runs. It's just the RB2 question is a difficult one, Ryan. I think that's a very difficult one because week to week you might be asking your offense for something different.
Yeah, they use these guys in so many different ways. Like Toafili, for example, we all know is of that group the best at catching the pass. I mean, he's that kid. Yeah, he can do a lot of
Swiss Army knife. He's looking more decisive this year. He's more shot out of a cannon as a runner. But if you're looking for a more physical presence, then you want Keziah Holmes to be RB2 in that situation behind Trey Benson. And then Rodney Hill has a little bit of everything to him.
These are good problems to have.
It's a good problem. It's hard to say who the hell the second running back is going to be. It's Trey's show first, and then after that, I think it goes week to week.
Which was what we said about wide receiver, running back, any skill position where guys want to be maybe featured. You know, if you're here, it's tough. I mean, on a given Saturday, it could be your Saturday to shine. You could be a star in a game, and the next week you might have 4 carries, or in the case of a receiver, you might have 5 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown against Wake Forest, and then the next week turn around and have 2 catches for 22 yards. It's just there's a lot of skill here, and every matchup is different.
There was a play yesterday, involves a running back, but it was on a pass, where there's a pressure coming Travis's way. It's 11 on 11, and you don't know if he sees it, and it's well timed. It's not one of those safety blitzes that takes an extra 3 seconds before the guy even gets to the line of scrimmage. It's a good look, and Jordan just calmly dips it, dunks it right over the head of the blitzers. Trey Benson is wide open, and he's got all kinds of green grass. You go, oh, man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one where Fuller, I'm sure, goes, son of a, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to have so many options at so many positions.